Hello everyone, my name is Smithy and welcome back to another video. So today we are going to be going through my top 10 easy bosses to start PvMing with in Old School Runescape. Now maybe a year ago I did a tier list on all of the bosses within the game in PvM and going through my thoughts on them. Obviously there's been some new additions to the game since then, but I got asked to kind of do a bit of a tiering ladder on best things to start off with in the game, like the easier kind of bosses, and then working your way up. Now, today, we're going to be going through, I say 10, but we've got a few others that I'm going to mention in here as well. This is more like 15, let's say, but 10 is what I'm focusing on. We're going to be going through 10 bosses, not necessarily in a set order of progressively getting harder, but 10 bosses that you can start thinking about when you're looking to get into PvM. There are also good benchmarks for setting early goals on your account as well, which when you're starting off an account is always good to have some goals to work towards. You know, push yourself, get yourself to a level where you can actually start doing the fun stuff. Just to say as well, pretty much all of the bosses that I'm going to be talking about in today's video, I've got a guide on them. So if you want to see how they're done, you want to get some tips on that specific boss, and you want to get some, insight on how the mechanics work, best things to use armor-wise, weapon-wise, etc., etc. If you look in the description of this video, I'll have all of the bosses listed out with links to all of their relevant guides that you can go, click on, have a look through. Some of them are a little bit older, but you get the main gist of the mechanics. They're not really changed in however many years it's been since I made the video. So look down in the comments. There'll be some video guides that you guys can check out. All right, so the first boss we are going to be talking about today is a staple on my channel. It's one that I had a bit of a love-hate relationship with, and that is Barrows. Now, Barrows is 6 different bosses, essentially, that are bundled into one boss, that you fight them in on their own. You don't have to fight them all at the same time, which is nice. But you go down in the different burrows, you dig down, and you kill each one of the brothers. Barrows is great because not only is it teaching you about starting off with PvM, because it is a very good benchmark to actually get your account to start, being at a level that you can do PvM, I don't want to say efficiently, but kind of effectively. But it's also good for learning overhead prayers, prayer flicking as well, and inventory management too, because if you are a lower level, you are going to be needing to use prayer pots. You might be needing to use some food, and it's making sure that, you're feeling comfortable with the amount of items that you've got on you or the amount of resources you've got on you to sustain yourself throughout the rest of the fights that you're going to need to do. Great. Not only does it teach you kind of that, it's kind of sprinkled in there, it's trickled in. The armor that it gives, the weapons that it gives, the sets that the Barrows can drop. You got 6 sets, which is one for each of the brothers, and they're some of the best items that you can use until later on in the game. I mean, I'm still using Arims, for example, on my Iron Man, and I'm 125 combat maxed max combat stats bar prayer. I'm still using it. I'm still using Carol's armor as well. It's a great tank range set. Guthan's has its uses with its hit point rejuvenation, and Darok's for doing or Darok bombing stuff when you bring your health down and you get the set bonus from that. All very, very good stuff. Verax armor as well. All really good items and awesome ones to get to start building up your account. Now, you are going to need 70 defense to wear the melee armor and 70 magic to use the mage armor and 70 range to use the range armor, but that's something you can work on while you're actually doing Barrows. Now, there's a few levels that I'd recommend aiming for before you start thinking about Barrows, or things that you can look at to, get your account ready for Barrows. And I recently did it on my hardcore. They're very, very obtainable. They're not going to take you months and months and months. You can do them in a few days, pretty much. But the first thing you're going to need, because you're clearly going to be working on your prayer, you're going to need some overheads. Now, you're going to need all 3 of the overhead prayers of melee, range, and magic. And with that, to sustain it, you're going to need some sort of prayer rejuvenation. You can go down the traditional route of prayer pots, which you need 38 herb lore for, but herb lore on a newer account, if you are an Iron Man, for example, is pretty shit. It's not great. It's not fun. It's going to take you a while to get to 38 herb realistically. Now, with the introduction of Varlamore, Moonlight Moth mixes, you need 75 Hunter, which sounds like a lot, but realistically, once you start getting the Hunter Rumors unlocked, which ties into your prayer training as well, I'll get to that, 75 Hunter didn't actually take me very long to get. If you full send it, you get it done in a few days, pretty much. Moonlight Moth mixes are, the budget version of the prayer pots. They're the Tesco value version, but they are very, very good and easy to get because you don't need to grow herbs or anything like that. You just go and catch some moths and stick them in some a jar with some meat. That's pretty much how you make them. Highly recommend. Highly recommend. If you're worried about the prayer pot thing, Moonlight Moth mixes. Also, with doing your Varlamore Hunter Rumors, you're going to be getting bone shards or bone fragments, whatever they're called, the chipped bone things that you can take to the altar that's in Varlamore. Incredible way for training your prayer. You don't have to worry about dragon bones at the Chaos altar, especially if you're a hardcore. Whip them over to Varlamore, those bone shards. Happy days. Easy way to get your overheads pretty early on. Also, with the introduction of elemental spells, it means that you don't have to go for that horrible Ivan staff anymore. You can use Wind Blast at level 41 magic. That works kind of all right. Wind Wave at 62 magic, which, you're going to need to get 70 magic at some point if you want to wear that Arims. Both very good options of Wind Blast, Wind Wave, because Barrows, they're weak to air elemental attacks. So Barrows is your good benchmark for getting started in PvM. I've rabbited on about Barrows now. We've got 9 other things to talk about. But before I do move away from Barrows, once you kind of get comfortable with Barrows, you start getting a few items, you can then up your game, all right? Talking of Varlamore, Moons of Peril. The armor sets there are fantastic, especially the Blood Moon, for example. The set bonus you get with that, the paddles, they're all sick. The Blood Moon chestplate is, I would say, a sideward step, but slightly better than the fighter torso. That's personal preference, but that's all I use these days. Incredible. But Moons of Peril is that little bit step above. It's going to teach you a few more mechanics about the game. It is a little bit tougher. The quest is a bit of a pain in the backside to get done and all of that stuff. But if you want to see what Moons of Peril are like as well, it's all pretty much the same requirements you need for Barrows, just with different quests. It's a little bit more difficult, but I'll put my guide down in the description as well. Like I said, I've got 10 items here, but I'm going to touch on other bosses as well. But Barrows into Moons of Peril, very, very good. Very good. Highly recommend. Now, working our way down this list, the next one is a quick one, and that is Giant Mole. Now, you're probably thinking, Giant Mole, why are you telling people to do that? Now, obviously, if you've got the Falador Hard Diary done, or if is it the Elite, one of the later Falador diaries, you get the indicator above its head and it tells you where it is when you're walking around. It's going around the underground bit where it is. Don't worry about that. Like, you can still get some pretty quick kills and that, and it's not that much of a pain in the backside, especially with the stamina update that they dropped recently. Your run energy is not going to go down as low. But the Giant Mole is a great source for birds' nests. So stocking those up early is fantastic for Saradomin brews, which you're going to need later down the line. It's a good way of prepping up yourself for later game, or more medium game for getting brews. So highly recommend starting to do some Giant Mole pretty early on. Might get yourself a nice little pet as well. There's some alks and stuff that you get from it. But the seeds that you get from doing Giant Mole when you turn in the mole pieces, the skin and claw, I think it is. The bird's nest, very good. Seeds, very good. Very good for getting your account that little step up. But Giant Mole, I wanted to throw it in here because it is a very good little boss. It's not too difficult to do as well. All you need to do is pray melee, and there's a range method as well that you can safe spot it. Yeah, you can do it. You can do it. I believe in you. Go and start stocking up your herb lore supplies. Now, touching on a newer boss that's come to the game, and this might be a good one to do. Is it a good one to do pre-Barrows? I mean, it's going to get your levels up pretty good. But Scurrius. Now, Scurrius, I think, is one of the best updates to the game, especially for early and mid-game. Your kills are going to be quite long when you're a lower level, especially if you're using slightly scuffed gear. But don't be deterred by that. Scurrius is very much doable at a lower level. It drops prayer pots, which is fantastic. It drops alks, which is fantastic. It drops some runes as well. But it's very good for learning, watching attacks that are coming at you to change your prayers. I think that's a very good mechanic to get down early on in your PvM journey, because you're going to need it like later on in raids and high level PvM monsters and stuff like that. The mechanics that it teaches you on watching your prayers, watching what attacks, watching the health bar as well for different health levels. There's different phases. That's really good. And also the whole dropping of the boulders and that. Just being aware of your environment. Scurrius is very good at teaching that. And I'm very impressed with how Jagex have put that boss together. It's also sick for training your combat. Like, Nightmare Zone is over. Let's get the party going. No more Nightmare Zone. Scurrius, obviously it's not as AFK as Nightmare Zone, but it's a fun fight. With the little rats that spawn, you bomb. Your XP rates are cracked. Highly recommend doing some Scurrius. It's going to give you a few prayer pots, like I said, which is going to help out with your other PvMing endeavours. And if you, I don't know, maybe if you're looking for rune items, it's going to drop you some there. But Scurrius, very good for teaching you some mechanics that you're going to be using in later game. Like, they're vital mechanics that you're going to be learning from it. So get your ass over to Varrock, start killing some big rat, all right? Start killing some big rat. And if you're a bit worried about it, there is a mass that you can do. I'm not really sure how it works, no, I don't think you really get many drops there, but if you're a normal account, it's a good way to start off. But yeah, Scurrius, good stuff. Good stuff. Get killing the Rat King. Now, we're going to move slightly from more comfortable stuff to big, spooky, scary wilderness. All right? Now, you're probably thinking, oh, no, why are you throwing some wilderness in it? No, we don't want any of that. Wilderness? No! But there's the three main wilderness bosses, but they not recently, but, in the past decade, got the kind of squishy baby versions plopped in the wilderness that are more lower wilderness levels. They're actually really good. They're really fun fights. They're an easier way to get yourself a Void Waker, which is fantastic, by the way. Love it. You love a Void Waker. And their drops are just very good in general as well. But the best one, I would say, to start getting into your wilderness adventures is Calvarion, or Calvin Harris, as I like to call him. You don't really need any decent weapons or armor. I mean, I go in there with the Dwarven Helm, a broken zombie axe, or a fixed zombie axe, not a broken one, that wouldn't work, would it? And Barrows gloves. That's pretty much what I go in with, and you just hit it with a crush attack, and Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. You get the kill. It doesn't use that many resources realistically, because you don't really need to pray during the fight. You mainly need to pray when the Hellhounds come out, and you can one-shot them. They're pretty easy. It's low enough in wilderness as well that you can get used to escaping PKers as well. But the mechanics, again, they're very good ones for like teaching you observational stuff within PvMing, especially when you need to move around from the stomp phases and the lightning on the floor and that. It's just situational awareness that Calvarion is very good at teaching. Highly recommend it. It's very good for a bit of dopamine as well, because there's some nice drops there. Alkaballs. You can start stocking up your wilderness food, which means you don't have to start using prayer pots and soup restores and actual proper food in the wilderness. You can use the blighted stuff. So yeah, it's kind of like a subset of resources that you can go and splash in the wilderness. Try and get yourself a cool little drop. Then you've also got RTO, which is the big bear, but the smaller bear. That one's a little bit more technical. Give it a go. It's a very fun fight. Again, there's all guides for these in the description. And if you get the Void Waker piece at Calvarion, why not go for the other two, right? So you've got RTO, which is a bit more of a PK'd spot, I'd say, than Calvarion. But you've got Spindle too, which is a little bit further out from Ferox Enclave. It's a little bit more out in the danger, but it's still all right. It's not that bad of a fight. But you are going to need like staminas and shit for that, and it's a bit more of a pain in the arse, which is why I'm not focusing on those two. Calvin Harris, Calvarion, very, very good little boss to start your wilderness journey. Now, the next one is Sarachnis, which is one that I spent quite a bit of time at because it took me a long while to get my cudgel, which is actually quite a good one to do before Calvin, because of the crush weapon you get with the cudgel. The cudgel is actually very good at Calvin Harris, especially if you got it on, well, you need to have it on crush. But Sarachnis is one of those that when you're lower level is a little bit more tricky, but it's still very much obtainable. The KCs are very easy still. It's good because you're going to need a crush weapon there as well. It's funny that it drops a very good crush, well, not very good, but a decent crush weapon. You need to crush it. It's the way it is. But with Sarachnis, it's again situational awareness, being wary of your keeping your health obviously above 0, switching your prayers out as well, learning different phases with the fight where you've got minions spawning at different hit point levels, and the different attacks that Sarachnis has. Like when it's done so many attacks, you're learning counting attacks. It'll then freeze you in place with a spider's web, and then it will bugger off to the other side of the room, switching your prayers to pray range, and getting back to the boss, getting back on your DPS, all that sort of stuff. It's got some nice drops there as well, especially with the red spider egg sacks. You're going to need them for super restores. The grubby keys as well, that gives some nice little resources dropped into your inventory once you unlock those chests. But Sarachnis, highly recommend giving it a go. I find it quite a fun little fight, especially if you get the Arania boots. But if you're watching this, you're not going to probably have 92, is it, or 95 Slayer to go and get those. So don't worry about them. If you watch this and you are high level, get those Arania boots on, man. You don't have to worry about spiderwebs anymore. You just AFK that shit. It's great. But Sarachnis, highly recommend. The resources it gives are very, very good. The weapon it gives is very, very good, especially for the level of PvMing you're going to be doing. Highly recommend Sarachnis. Great for teaching you a whole bunch of different mechanics, keeping your eyes on stuff, moving around the room, making sure that your hit points are staying up because you've got those minions attacking you. It's also teaching you about wearing kind of hybrid armor as well, because you get an attack with mage attacks from one of the minions. You're going to want to wear some range tank as well as your melee, your best in slot melee stuff to make sure that you're getting the DPS. It's very, very good. Highly recommend. Highly recommend. Now, another new boss, or bosses, I should say, is Royal Titans. Now, I think this definitely deserves a spot on this list. It's one of those updates that's come to the game that feels like it's been in the game for years. It's a great way to get used to doing PvM with someone else, because it is a duo boss by nature. You can solo it, all right? You can solo it, but probably if you're watching this, you're probably not going to have amazing gear. But Royal Titans is good for learning to do content with a friend, or even if it's just a random person, learning calls, all that sort of stuff. Gear switching, because you're going to need range and melee when you're in there. Dealing with, again, situational chip damage with the fire and ice that it throws on the floor, and also the minions too. Keeping an eye on those. Watching phases of attacks as well, of the bosses moving out that you then range, and then when they come in close and meleeing them back, and watching their health to get down to a certain level to then do the final fight, and then moving around the room, keeping an eye on when that little spinny thing is on the floor to then they do their charged attacks. And also, it gives you the upgraded Eagle Eye and Mystic Might prayer scrolls, which are great. If you get those at a lower level, fantastic. You've got them all the way until you start doing chambers and getting those prayer scrolls. So Royal Titans is great for runes. It's great for alchables. I think it gives prayer pots and food and shit as well. But highly recommend giving it a go if you've not tried it yet. Very, very good. It teaches you a whole range of different mechanics in the game. Like I said, working with someone else as well. It's good fun. It's good fun. Now, next one is one that's been around for years, and that is Skotizo, which is a boss that I don't think many people think about. It's great for your Slayer tasks. I believe it's Black Demons, and I think there's another one, Skotizo. Yeah, Skotizo. Black Demons and Greater Demons. I knew there was another one. Slayer tasks. If you're doing Slayer in the Catacombs of Krend, you get those little blue and green pieces that then form that little pendant thing that you're probably like, what the fuck is this for? It's for Skotizo. If you've got yourself an Arclight, highly recommend giving it a go. Just pray mage and pray melee. There's a guide down below that will give you all the details. But yeah, you've got some nice drops from it. It also pumps out the hard clues, elite clues, all that sort of stuff. So if you want to get on your clue grind, highly recommend. Just make sure you don't have any in your bank when you kill it. It's also one of your best chances to get in a pet. So when I say one of your best chances, not including Jad, Jumping, all that shit, Chaos Ellie. Very good for getting a pet. So if you want to get a little bit of pet on the board, Skotizo. Great Slayer XP. Great fight for, learning shit about moving around the room, but also watching your prayers and everything like that. Just very good. It's just very good. People kind of sleep on it, I think. Yeah. Look it up. There's a guide. Give it a watch. See what you think. Skotizo definitely deserves to be on this list of easy bosses, because it's not a hard fight. It's really not. Now, we've got 3 more on this list, and the next one is Amoxliatl. Moxie. All right, we're calling it Moxie. Probably a lot of people have already gone, what the fuck is this doing on the list? If you're learning PvM and you want to learn PvM or mechanics against a pretty, I don't want to say squishy boss, it's not very hard, but the movement that it's teaching you around the room and teaching you about, all right, if I get ice on this tile, I can no longer stand on it, it's fantastic, especially for like poison mechanics and venom mechanics of pools on the floor, chambers, all that sort of stuff. High level PvM all has those sort of shitty mechanics that you hate. You don't want to do them, but you have to because you want to get the big boy stuff, big gamer stuff in the game. All right, but Moxie is very good for teaching that. It really is. It really is. And there's some decent alchables you can get from there, and all like the smithing supplies, like the ores and all that, and the runes that you can get from there as well. It's just a good boss, and it's invulnerable, so it gives you loads of blessed bone shards as well. It's not very hard to get to do it. It's got a cool little pet that you can farm pretty easily. Yeah, Moxie, man, it's slept on. I mean, it's a bit of a duff boss if you're, real high level, and you just kind of pet hunt him. But yeah, I'd say very good. It's an entry level boss like Scurrius, and I would highly recommend giving it a go. I think it's a very fun little fight. It's great for getting yourself comfortable in PvMing and learning movement and learning different attack styles and looking out for different attacks coming your way. Give it a go. Highly recommend. All right, and now a bit of an old school boss, this one. I mean, it's been in the game for donkey's years, pretty much. And it's one that not many people do. It's been in the game since 2017. And that is the Deranged Archaeologist. Now, it's probably one of the easier and safer ways to get a rune crossbow at lower level. You're still going to need the fletching, but it's a 1 in 25.6 to get rune limbs there, which is pretty good. You want a rune crossbow pretty early on in the game. Fletching isn't that hard to get up. Rune limbs. It also drops like prayer pots, which is good for stocking up. Black dragon hide as well. Maybe you've got your crafting up that you can start making some black D hide armor. It also has potential for long bones, which can help it out with your crafting. You've got different seeds on there, but they're pretty rare. It drops black D hide bodies, even like just full blown range upgrade if you're lower level. Yeah, it's definitely slept on as a boss. There's quite a few combat achievements around it as well that you can get done, that you can start pushing your CAs up. But the main thing is that those rune limbs, they're just, they're a bit of a pain in the backside to get lower level. I know you've got metal dragons and you've got the wilderness deranged folk. But the Deranged Archaeologist, you just need Fossil Island access and you can start doing it. It's I've got, again, there's a guide up for it. Yeah, highly recommend giving it a go. Just, it's not that difficult of a boss. It's good for teaching you about watching out for calls from a boss as well, for when their special attack is going to happen, moving around safely around the room when it does do its special attack, because it throws out like these books that explode and they bounce and shit. Watching out for that, making yourself you're in a position you're not going to get hit by it. Yeah, it's great for situational awareness, maybe getting some upgrades, and just overall in general, just it's a good start of PvM. It really is. And now this last one, number 10 on the list. Again, these aren't in any particular order, but this one is your final boss of early PvM. You've been working all of these different bosses, you've been getting yourself little upgrades, you've been getting your levels up, you've been, beefing up your account, you've now got a somewhat respectable armor set and weapon set, you've got a nice rounded account, you've got your supplies kind of stocked up, there's still a little bit more, I've got to keep them topped, I've got to keep an eye on them, but you're in a nice place with your account, you've been doing all of these different PvM bosses, you've been learning about mechanics, you've been learning about prayer swapping or prayer switching, you've been learning about situational awareness, you've been learning about how to watch out for mechanics. Once you've got a solid amount of KCs at these bosses, not necessarily a solid amount, but no, like you get the gist of them, you've got the idea, you've now getting them down, being able to kill them comfortably, and you've got yourself some drops and upgrades and all that sort of stuff. My friends, it is now time for you to go and face the end of early game, the start of mid. And that, my friends, is Jad. I think Jad is the perfect rounding off of your early game, jumping into that or edging into that mid game, that kind of stepping stone. There's no real better feeling in the game than getting your first fire cape. Yeah, you've got the Inferno, but don't worry about that shit. Forget that for a second, right? Forget that. Getting your first fire cape is such an achievement, and it's such a goal to tick off in your PvMing experience. I cannot recommend getting that done as early as possible when you feel comfortable. Obviously, don't go rushing yourself into it, because it's a daunting thing to think about when you're starting off your account. But once you've kind of built up, especially your range setup, and you've started getting some decent levels in there, you've been training your prayer as well, and you've got that to a decent level, you've got prayer pots on tap, you've got food, all of that good stuff. Jad, then you can round off the early game and start thinking about the next step in PvM, the next set of bosses that you can start taking on. But Jad, I really think puts your skills to the test. It really, if you're a lower level and you've got a fire cape, you need to pat yourself on the back, because it's not an easy task. You get the old Jad hands when you do get to Jad, but it's fantastic for teaching you about inventory management, resource management, positioning yourself within the fight caves as well, so you don't get overwhelmed. There's a few different things that you can do to I don't want to say increase your chances, but increase your chances of finishing it at lower level and just have an overall better time. And that is like blood spells and things like that, which I talk about all in the video I made about Jad, again in the description. Highly recommend just setting that as your end of early game goal. Once you've built up, especially your range setup, because basically you're going to be using range at Jad. Carol's armor, once you've got that, once you've got yourself maybe a rune crossbow as well, or even a magic short bow, that's probably quite obtainable from doing these bosses. Yeah, I would say set that your first goal, getting started with Barrows. All right, working your way through then all of these bosses, because setting yourself a Barrows will set you up with like base 70s, and that might seem unachievable, but you can go with like base 60s, maybe late 50s kind of thing. Setting Jad is like your end goal, your next big goal. After you've played around, done a load of these different bosses and that, have fun with it. Don't pigeonhole yourself as I must do this. set that as your end of early game entry into mid game goal, getting yourself a fire cape, because I think that will put you on a really good path for enjoying PvM and having a great old time with it, because PvM is like one of the best things in this bloody game. Yeah, there's so much good content that you can enjoy, especially if you're new to the game. Like, you don't know what all these different bosses are. You've heard about them, you see videos on them, you're like, what the fuck is that? How am I going to do that myself? I think this set of bosses that I've spoken about in the video will teach you a nice amount of mechanics within the game. It's the whole reason why Jagex are introducing the likes of like Scurrius and Royal Titans and all of that sort of stuff, is about teaching like skills that you're going to use like later on in the game, because there's no real way to teach it other than doing it and sprinkling it in, trickling it in through easier content, but you get the concept of it. It becomes like muscle memory, and you can start picking up, again, like I said, for newer players or people who are coming back to the game who haven't played in years and like, what's all this new shit that's in the game? Yeah, I definitely think there is a lot here for you to get started, have some fun with it, get your account beefed up a bit, and then just start, going at it. So if you have enjoyed and you are new around here, please do consider subscribing, dropping a like as well, as let me know that you guys enjoyed the video. It also helps with that lovely algorithm. And let me know in the comments as well, any bosses that you think should be on this list as well. Any that you think maybe, ooh, that's not really early game, Smith. That should be more mid-game. Tell me about it. I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Let's discuss it. And if you need any help, if you've got any questions, I am all ears. You've got the comment section, where you've got the Discord, the clan chat, whatever. Come and have a conversation. It's all good. It's all good. But I wish you all the best on your PvMing journey. And let me know if you want me to do kind of a mid-tier version of this. And I would be happy to do that. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and goodbye.